but the kitchen was like, it looked like someone had like literally emptied a bag of dirt onto their kitchen floor. This is my girl boss mug. I found out that I was moving to London specifically in June, and the very first thing on my mind was finding a place to live. And actually, I think besides actually applying to graduate school so I could live here, the hardest thing that I have done is finding a place to live. That is what I'm gonna focus on in this video. And if you're brand new here, my name is Katie. I have lived in the UK before. I lived in Edinburgh when I was about like 21, 22, and I have just recently moved to London about, I wanna say like a month ago. You could subscribe if you want. That'd be sick. To give you guys an idea, I have only been to London. I came once for a weekend around Christmas about 2 years ago when I was in Edinburgh, and then I came with my family in about 2019. When I started looking for a place to live, I just really had no idea like what neighborhoods were good to live in, what the culture was. So honestly, thank God that I went through this as roughly as possible so that I can hopefully lend some pretty useful advice on finding housing once you move to London. And if you don't want to deal with any of the stuff that I'm going to mention in this video, I recommend you check out Amber Students. If any of this sounds interesting to you, please check out the link that is going to be in my description box and also in the pinned comment. If you are an international student and you don't really have time to deal with the rental market and everything that I'm going to talk about, Amber pretty much does it all for you. Amber has a prominent selection of housing in London, as well as other UK cities such as Coventry, Sheffield, Nottingham, Liverpool, Leeds, Glasgow, and Birmingham. You can use their search engine to find places that fit your direct specifications. So you can look within your budget, you can look near your university, you can look for roommates, you can see all of the amenity details, everything that comes with the accommodation. Amber is also available in over 20 plus countries. And one of the best things, and I'm gonna talk about this, is I got into bidding wars and sort of the tension that, and the speed and the rate that all of these viewings and bookings take. Amber takes all of that away, which is so beautiful. There won't be any negotiations. The price is the price, and someone else will do all of the hard paperwork for you, which it's really overwhelming just moving to a new country in general, and taking this all off your plate is a really nice thing, especially if you're only coming for a semester or a year. I definitely recommend checking out Amber. Amber books it all for you, but they will also take care of cumbersome paperwork, including lease agreements. And students can also find out more about their home away from home with live viewing sessions and with their on-the-ground property experts. So if any of this sounds interesting, again, just go to the link that is in my description and the pinned comment, and that unique link will get you set up with Amber Students. All right, let's get into it. So I tried to organize my thoughts. Oh my God, this has been the most chaotic experience of my whole entire life. The way that I started even looking for places to live in London was through online platforms. So the number one that I would say that most people have used to find a place is called Spare Room. And basically Spare Room is, it's kind of like a site where if you already have a lease signed with people and like one person is moving out, you can put that one room up on the app. And then the other ones that I use specifically, there are other apps and I'm sure that you could look into them. These are just the ones that I have personal experience with, but I also used Open Rent and something called Zoopla. And Open Rent it's for landlords like leasing whole properties. And then I actually went to a viewing that was a room in a property. And then Zoopla was also the same. It was like dealing directly with agents. So I use Spare Room to find my housemates, and to sign our lease and stuff, we use the platform Open Rent. While Spare Room is really helpful because it can connect you with people, I will say on all of these platforms, you do want to be really careful of scams. I ran into a few scams on Spare Room. I ran into a lot on Facebook in Facebook groups. I would say that is where the most of them are, but you always want to make sure that like your landlord or person you're talking to is verified and they're like a real person. And then if somebody asks you to put down money before you've seen a property in person, absolutely say no. I had that happen to me about 3 times, and then I heard a horror story from a friend of mine where basically all of these students had put down money on a property and they showed up to move in and they were like knocking on the door. They were waiting for someone to come and get their keys, and like the place was already occupied, like it didn't exist. So you have to be really careful and definitely look out for yourself and try to verify all of the people that you are talking to. So once you sort of figured out those platforms, I would say start putting in sort of like figuring out your budget and figuring out what area that you want to live in. So I currently live in an area called Fulham, and I really, really like it here. It's sort of like a quieter neighborhood vibe, but there are a lot of like young professionals in the area, but there's also like there's a lot of families for sure. Basically, once you get to London, or even before you come, like if you know anybody in London who's already lived here, try to go to them for neighborhood advice, because there are so many distinct neighborhoods. It's all gonna vary on price. Like the closer you get to central London, the more expensive it's gonna be. The further you go out, like the neighborhoods definitely vary on their vibe. Definitely start talking to people and figure out where you may see yourself living. Honestly, going to viewings are gonna be your worst enemy, but your best friend. I thankfully had a place to stay when I came to London with a family friend, but it took me about 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks to find a place. And I have been told that that's actually pretty short for London, which I was really not expecting, but the market is so saturated right now. It's just a crazy time. But once I started going on viewings, I did them in a bunch of different neighborhoods, so I sort of got a taste of the area that I was going to beforehand. So like I would show up to the area like a half an hour before my viewing and just kind of like walk around, walk the neighborhood, try and like Google stats about it, and I mean, try and gather as much useful information as I could about the place. But viewings take up so much of your time, and I was doing them from Richmond, so like pretty much everywhere it took me like at least like an hour plus an hour and a half to get there. So it was absolutely exhausting, but it's just kind of like, you can't, there's no way around it. It's just sort of like what you have to do. Only just like mentally prepare yourself for it and bring snacks. But the two things that were really important to me when finding a place is that the neighborhood was safe, that there was like a little bit more green space around me, because I like to go for walks. I like to, you know, see some greenery. While I did move to London, obviously I like the city. I didn't want to live in like a huge, what's that called? Like a high rise or something like that. I kind of wanted like more of a neighborhood feel, and I wanted a nice, safe walk from the closest tube station. That is going to be probably like one of the most important things when you're looking in London, is that a tube station is close, that you can get like groceries around you pretty quickly, that it's safe, especially like being a female of small stature. I was really kind of focused on having a safe route to the tube, because especially right now it gets dark at like 4:40 in the afternoon. So stay safe. Oh, and then I also wanted flatmates who were like sort of in the same stage of life as me. I was looking to live with young professionals, even though I'm in grad school and everyone in my flat is young professionals. So then some things to know about sort of like the culture of London living is that there are like flat shares, which are pretty common, and then there's like sort of house shares. And this is what a lot of young people do who are living in the city, and I think it's a really great way to sort of immediately immerse yourself in the city. And while I am like a very like introverted person and like I like my alone time and my space, I also didn't want to just live with one roommate. Because like, what if I didn't like them? Or like, what if we didn't get along? They didn't want to talk to me. And then I would be in this huge big city, sort of like all by myself, facing it, which sounds absolutely terrifying. I'm technically in like a house. I live in a 5-bedroom house with 6 people, and it was completely furnished when we came in, like talking about, like we even had a toaster and cutlery, and the only thing we really had to buy was a TV. So it was really, really nice. But when you're looking for apartments, some of the most important things are the area, of course, the flatmates. The bills in London are quite high. There's something called council tax, and it varies from area to area. So I think depending on if you're like more central, your council taxes are gonna be higher. You can apply, if you're a student, you can apply not to pay council taxes, but because I'm living with all working professionals, it didn't work out, so I do have to pay like full council tax. But thankfully for Fulham, it's not that high, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. You can look up like by postcode how much you would have to pay, and definitely something to just keep in mind because that can add quite a bit on top of your monthly rent. But on Spare Room, what is nice is that you can filter through properties that have bills included. If you have like an absolute cap budget that you're looking for, you can hit like your cap and then hit bills included, and then that will hopefully be just everything that you need. Next step we're going to is how you actually book a flat and the mistakes that I made. I didn't really know this, but if you are an international person moving to the city, you need a UK guarantor for most properties, and most people won't even like talk to you if you don't have a guarantor. So basically that just means that if you like default on your rent, that there's a person in the UK that they can like look at their finances and be like, okay, well, this person is liable. I thankfully have a UK guarantor, and they were so nice to offer to do that for me. I honestly, it was so incredibly kind, because if you don't have a UK guarantor, basically what you have to do is you can go through different companies and you can talk to your school about this as well. They will have people on campus who can help you through this process, but you can basically pay a company to be your UK guarantor, but it's quite a long process, so it's definitely something you will have to research before you actually come here. One of the biggest mistakes that I made was looking on Spare Room before I actually came to the country. I was like waiting on visa stuff, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need to find a place to live, and I was stressing myself out. I'm gonna be so honest with you guys, don't even start looking until you're on the ground, because you need your visa and your BRP to even sign a lease in this country. And then you also really, really, really want to be here for in-person viewings, because usually, let's say Spare Room will put up an ad and they will get, you know, like 50 messages depending on the place, and everyone will descend for viewings. And most of the time, once you arrive there, they're gonna ask you, do you want the property? And you have to either like take it and call the landlord and get into bidding wars, or move on to the next one and just like hope it works out. I know this sounds like so overwhelming, and that's because it is, but I'm gonna help. Oh yeah, and the other really big mistake that I made was even answering like random realtors who contacted me on Facebook. Most of them were scams. Like I Googled them, I Googled their name, which is a very simple thing to do, and like they didn't exist. Especially if you don't speak the language and it's your second language, like just don't trust anybody. Like trust some people, like if they seem trustworthy, but always verify. And then the other mistake that I made was not asking for a video call first. If you're looking on Spare Room and you are like dealing with the other roommates who are just trying to get rid of the room, ask them to do a video call of the place before you actually trek all the way out there. This is something that I wish I had done more, because there were so many properties that I went to that I showed up and the people were either just like really, really messy, and it was just, or you get a sense of like who the people are that you're talking to, and it just kind of becomes an immediate no. Like there are just those gut feelings that you get from talking to people and seeing things on a video, where you can save a lot of your time by not actually like taking, you know, 3 hours out of your day, you know, sitting on the tube for hours going to all these viewings. Now I'm gonna go through the properties that I went to and the reasons that I didn't pick them. The very first property that I looked at was in an area called Marylebone. It wasn't really even in the area, it was close to this place called Edgware Road, and I showed up and the realtor was very nice, but the place looked way, way more spacious in pictures, and I would have had to have found a second roommate to fill the room. I didn't love the area, so I decided to pass. And then the second viewing that I went to was in Notting Hill, and I thought this would be a safe bet because, you know, the Hugh Grant movie, like, we love it. I will say, like, everyone in Notting Hill is absolutely beautiful. Like, I don't know what they're putting in the water over there. The first one that I went to in Notting Hill was again in a really kind of bad area. The tube stop that was nearby, I didn't love the idea of walking back there at night. The third one that I went to was in a place called St. John's Wood. You guys know, like, the Beatles and, like, Abbey Road. Like, it was like, I think it was like off Abbey Road. It was a cool place, and I genuinely liked the people, but again, it was really, really small and really, really expensive. And when I showed up there, I had another viewing in the afternoon, and the girl was like, oh yeah, you can just like text the realtor and she can like get you in. And by the time that I went to my second viewing, the place was already in a bidding war. 3 people had already said they wanted it, and they were now like going toe to toe, like trying, like raising the price pretty much, which I just said no to. And then number 4 was, this is my deep-rooted trauma. These next two are like, they're so awful. So I went to another one in Notting Hill, and this one seemed really, really promising. There's a bunch of girls my age, and without like giving too many details, but I basically went into this place and the room itself was fine, but the kitchen was like, it looked like someone had like literally emptied a bag of dirt onto their kitchen floor. I was like, honest, I wish that I had taken pictures of this because I have never seen anything like this before. I have seen messy people, like I'm not like immune to this. Like you know, I've lived in college accommodations before with messy people, but this was to another level that I have never seen before, and I just, honestly, I left kind of horrified after that one and extremely jaded. I was really stuck on Notting Hill because I really liked the area. The 5th one that I went to was also in Notting Hill, and it was in this great area, and I showed up and the realtor she was so rude. Like I'm no stranger to people being busy and doing all that stuff, but like I would ask her like just a basic question about it and she would be so annoyed that I asked her like just even like, oh, who else is living here? Like she was like, I don't know. I was like, okay, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I asked. But this was the room that traumatized me maybe the most, more than the dirt kitchen floor, was that the room was just like, it was like covered in like old food, alcohol, cigarettes, and then there were bugs like all over the room. The craziest part is that I was literally like leaving this place and being like, should I just take it? Because it'll be cleaned. And I hadn't met any of the people, but because the London rental market is so competitive, it's just like, I was just at a point where I was like, can I even afford to like let this place go? But I'm just gonna say to you guys right now, don't do that. Don't think that, because in the next week, things actually did work out and you can find nice places to live, I promise. And then the 6th one that I went to, it was sort of like a dorm for young professionals, also in Notting Hill. I really, really liked this place and I put in an offer and I was ghosted. So that just happens. People just don't respond to you. It's very frustrating. I would sit and send like 50 messages a day on Spare Room, and like maybe not 50, maybe I'd say like 20, maybe let's say like 20, and maybe like 2 people would get back to me. So it's a very frustrating process, but as you can see, I did find a place to live and it's very nice. And I like the people that I live with. So yeah, then the last viewing I went to was this place. It's like honestly like maybe not gonna show up because I was like so jaded from the weekend before. I was like, I just maybe need a break from this. But I persevered and I came to this place. Yeah, I hadn't met the people before, but they seemed nice, good vibes. And so the property was really, really nice, really, really clean, safe area. Just had to jump on it. And I didn't know these people very well. It's all going really well so far. So thank you guys so much for watching, and hopefully I will do like a little room tour later. Please let me know if you have any questions or comments on the London rental market, because it is definitely a crazy place to be. Remember, Lisa says to have fun.